Hi everyone, I'm Jack, and today the item I will be presenting on is an old USC football that I got from one of the games when I was young. Growing up, I attended a lot of USC football games, and this ball reminds me of those experiences and the competitive culture that I grew up in. When I look at this ball, a story of sports culture flows through my head. It would begin when we walked through the doors of the USC football stadium, which is known as the Coliseum, modeled after the original Roman Coliseum. And the architecture of the stadium is extremely important, as explained by Samovar and others in the textbook Communication Between Cultures. Art forms are not merely a mirror of culture, but art also heightens cultural and social integration by displaying and confirming values that members of a culture hold in common. This is especially true of the Colosseum, designed with these huge concrete slabs, these high Roman arches, and with the stadium fit to fill tens of thousands of stands. The scope of the stage really is grand, and you get this focus on power, on victory. You see that in the mascot as well too. It's a Trojan, where again focusing on the victor of the war that's talked about in the Iliad and a little bit in the Odyssey too. Again, there's that emphasis on victory, on competition, on winning, and it's so evident in how the fans interact with each other. Edward Hall famously said that culture is communication and communication is culture. And I see that especially in how the fans interact with one another. When you go to the game, there are certain ceremonies. There are certain chants. When you go through the tunnels, you yell in a specific way. You pump your fists in the air. Sometimes people would get up in the camera boxes and lead chants. And Perhaps the most impressive ceremony of all was the stadium has actually hosted the Olympic ceremonies twice, and so they have the Olympic torch left over from those events, and so before the fourth quarter, they always light it. And again, you see the Olympic torch being lit, you see the stadium, which is modeled after the Roman original, and you can't help but feel those feelings of glory, of power, and maybe you can understand a little bit like the concept of the Romans had like slaying your enemies and becoming victorious, and all that jazz. Um, and however, for me as a little kid, uh, that could be overwhelming. And understanding culture as communication, as explained by Edward Hall, is helpful because we can look at the components of communication as impacting how we interpret the culture that we interact with. And this was especially true for me in the context of the USC games. The textbook by Samovar and others, Communication Between Cultures, again, written in 2017, defines context as the setting and environment which help determine the words and actions you generate and the meanings you give to the symbols you receive. For me, as a young kid, being in the stadium filled with tens of thousands of fans, there's a lot of noise, a lot of bumping into other people, there's a lot of adults getting drunk, and I felt uncomfortable a lot of times. It got scary. And a lot of the ways I see competitive culture now has been influenced by that. It's something that's fun, but that's also scary. And it's difficult to navigate. It's emotional. Sometimes it gets to be a little bit too much. However, when I was at the games, there was one thing that kept me from ever being completely overwhelmed and having a panic attack, and that was a halftime. At halftime, there'd be a break in the game, and so my parents would take me and my younger brother out to grab some food, and then we toss the ball back and forth for a while. This very ball, actually. And when we did that, for me, it was a huge relief because we managed to get away from everyone else, and it was just kind of our family, our thing, and we were able to relax, have fun, and just kind of be. And with that, the games really became enjoyable because I never really got too tired out. I never became too frazzled because I had that balance. And so this item is so important to me because it represents that balance between my competitive nature and the part of me that needs to be nurtured, that needs to be cared for, that's vulnerable, but that also loves others. So that's why this ball is important to me, and thank you for listening.